Thank you, Dear Tom. And good afternoon again, church family. Today I'll be talking about sharing one of the sites that we went to during our Israel trip last month. This is the second tour day. So today I'll be showing pictures on one of the sites that we went to on the second tour day that morning. We visited the Church of the Primacy of St. Peter. The Church of the Primacy of St. Peter is a Franciscan church located in Tabgha, Israel. And Tabgha is located on the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee. We spent 2 nights on the Sea of Galilee. And the northwest part of Galilee, this is the area where Jesus spent most of his ministry. So it was pretty cool just being in our bus and just seeing the hills and seeing the same view that Jesus would have seen multiple times, just over the beautiful Sea of Galilee, and also known as Lake Tiberias. So this church, the church here on the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee, commemorates and reportedly marks the spot based on archaeological evidence of Jesus' reinstatement of Peter, or Jesus' restoration of Peter as chief among the apostles. According to tradition, this is the spot where Jesus is said to have laid out a breakfast of bread and fish for the apostles and told Peter to, quote, feed my sheep, after another miraculous catch of fish. And this is actually the third time that Jesus appeared to them after the resurrection. So this would be considered a Site A location because they know, based on archaeological evidence, that this is most likely, or at least around the place of where this actually happened, as recorded in the New Testament. And this site may also have been the same location of the first miracle catch of fish, when Jesus first called Peter and Andrew to follow me. And then over 3 years later, he says, feed my sheep. I just thought that was so cool. It may have been. So I'll go ahead and read the passage just so we can. So John 21, verses 1 to 19 in the NIV. John 21, 1 to 19. If you have your Bibles, if you want to turn there. Jesus and the miraculous catch of fish. So afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, so John is listing the disciples' names here, the sons of Zebedee, and James and John, and 2 other disciples were there. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them. And they said, we'll go with you. So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing again. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? No, they answered. Throw your net on the other side of the boat and you'll find some. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of such a large number of fish. It is that big, that heavy. And no, this is an unusual amount of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved, most likely John, said to Peter, it is the Lord! It is the Lord! As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him for taking it off, and he dove. He jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. Fishermen always fished in the shallow ends. And when they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. How amazing is this, that Jesus cooks breakfast for his friends. He cooks breakfast. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you just caught, so we can eat more. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, not just fish, but large fish, 153 large fish, but even so, and the net was not torn. the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. And then Jesus reinstates and restores Peter, his honor, his dignity. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Then Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said, "Lord, you know all things, you know everything, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then Jesus said to Peter, "Follow me." Follow me. I love how Jesus reenacts the same. He knows how to bring healing to Peter, and he reenacts the same night that Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Where was Peter when he denied Jesus? He was by a fire at night to keep warm. He would have smelled coals so he can keep his hands and his body warm. And here he is again, still harboring that guilt and that shame from that night that he denied Jesus publicly. And the smell of the coals would have triggered the memories of rejecting Jesus. And here, so Jesus is like intentionally bringing back probably the biggest pain and source of shame that Peter has ever had in his life. And this is how Jesus actually heals Peter, by removing the pain of his denial. Jesus gives Peter 3 opportunities to redeem himself. And so going to this site gave this story a completely new meaning for me, just more realistic experience of what Jesus and Peter would have experienced. I see more of myself in Peter, and I can sense more of the freedom and the healing and the restoration that Jesus gives me as he did for Peter, because I've harbored shame. I've denied Jesus in my heart before, maybe not publicly, but in my heart. So I feel undeserving of many things from God. But here is Peter, who also feels undeserving, and Jesus says, "Follow me." And so I'm reminded by the story that Jesus gives me my worth. Jesus gives me my purpose, just as he did for Peter. So let's show the first picture. I'm ready to put the first slide up. So this first picture I want to show is a view from the hills of Galilee on the way. This is us on the view that it looks like on the way down from the Mountain Beatitudes Church. That was the first site that we visited that morning. And this is just what it looks like. You can tell it's from the bus. On the way down the hill to the Church of the Primacy of St. Peter. And that's the northwest shore of Galilee right there. Second picture. So this is what the entrance to the church looks like. And you'll notice that it says, if you can see, Mensa Christi at the bottom of the sign there. Mensa Christi is Latin for Table of Christ. Table of Christ. Next picture. And then, so once you go through there, there's this lovely path from the entrance to where the actual church building is. So I just thought that was nice. Next picture. And this was a big, lovely tree outside the church. I just thought that was pretty. Next one. And then right on to the right of that is where our group sat to listen to our tour guide before actually entering the church. And just stay here for a moment. And this is where he reminded us of the story that we just read about the 153 fish and the miraculous catch. Our tour guide said that they would have had to count the fish for tax purposes. Everything was about taxation. So they had to count the fish. That's why one of the reasons why they know how many fish there are for tax purposes. And he also shared what he thinks Peter might have been feeling that morning, seeing Jesus again. Our tour guide, you said something like Peter probably would have been the only disciple like looking down most of the time when they were having breakfast. And so just kind of sharing his take on this story again made Peter's restoration more real and personal to me and helped me to see myself in Peter. It was also amazing. We got a rare glimpse of our tour guide as a father. So he's a dad. I think he has 3 children. And if you remember, like what we just read, Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me?" And so our tour guide, he shared a little bit of his story with us. He shares that he's been divorced and he's remarried with another a baby, I think 14, 15 months old. But he shared the 2 different Greek words for love, phileo versus agape. So being divorced, having gotten divorced before, he knows what it's like to fall out of love. He knows what it's like for someone to fall out of love with him. So that's, he would say, phileo. Phileo is like kind of like a friendship, like brotherly, like I love you because you love me back. If you didn't love me, I don't know if I would love you back, kind of thing. Whereas agape, he defined agape love as that unconditional love that he feels towards his children. And he said, for example, if my son, and his face totally changed when he started talking about his children. He said, if my son didn't love me and even told me that he didn't love me, I don't care. He said, I don't care if he doesn't love me. I just love him. I'm going to keep loving him. And that's agape love. And that's the love that Jesus has for us. That's the love that God has for us. If we don't love him, he wants us to love him back, but he's just like, I'm going to love you. It doesn't matter if you love me back. I love you. So that was powerful for me, just sitting here listening to our tour guide. Next picture. So this is inside the church. So the church, and so you see this rock here. It contains a projection of, this is limestone rock in front of the present altar, and it's venerated as a mensa Christi, again, the table of Christ. So the entire church, it sits on this enormous limestone rock. Next picture. So this is the rock that is believed to have been the place where Jesus was having breakfast with his disciples. This is Stephen and I touching the rock. I think our eyes are half like we're sleeping. Next picture. It was pretty, just showing the stained glass windows. See my dad in the foreground. Next picture. So this I took from Wikipedia. This is actually a picture of the church from the shore. And notice the water level of the Sea of Galilee. You can't really see the water level here. Well, when we were there, the water level was much higher. So the shore was actually like under where that tree is in the middle. The water level was a lot closer to the church when we were there. Next picture. So this is Stephen and I leaning on the rock. Again, an extension of that limestone rock the entire church is on. And if you notice, you can't really see it from here, but there's a little sign there on the left, and it says, "This is a holy ground." This is a holy ground. So next picture. Because this site is considered holy ground, no swimming is allowed. There's a sign there, no swimming is allowed, and apparently no kayaking or weekending is allowed either. I thought this was so funny. I caught the friar on his walkie-talkie to evacuate these weekenders, these hooligans or whatever, having fun on the Sea of Galilee on Shabbat. Shabbat is Saturday, Sabbath. More religious Jews don't do this kind of things. But this is a holy ground, so he was trying to evacuate them. So I just thought that was, I've never seen a friar on a walkie-talkie before. So next picture. This is Stephen, Hazel, Tabin, and me. And you'll notice Hazel and I with our feet in the Sea of Galilee. It's very warm, so it's nice. And then the last picture. So again, you can probably notice how much closer the water level, how much higher the water level is. And I was in the middle of looking for a few pebbles to take home. They said you can take pebbles. So you can just leave it here. So because of this life-changing breakfast with Jesus on this very beach, Peter was empowered to grow more and more to look like Jesus. And this powerful restoration through forgiveness, this amazing forgiveness that lifted the shame and the guilt off of his heart and shoulders. And this grace, it emboldened Peter, it empowered him to become one of the early church's most fearless spokesmen. And I want you to know that Jesus seeks each of us to follow him and lovingly calls us, follow me. God bless you, church.